Well, it's the stroke of 10:30, so I'm going to jump in and we'll probably have a few more people along for the ride here in a few minutes. So thank you everyone for attending. I am Annie Tyler, sales rep at Fidelity Title, and I have my escrow officer, Lori Fred. And I also brought you a great speaker, learn how to negotiate anything. And we're going to learn a lot about negotiating in real estate, but there's a lot of skills you can use throughout your life, actually. So I have expert mediator, negotiator, communicator, Alice Shakina on with us today. She'll tell you a little bit more about herself. I've known her for quite some time, and she's a great resource for this sort of thing. I have taken advantage of her skills and abilities myself. So, Alice, would you like to tell us a little bit more about you and your background before we
Yes,
jump in?
sure. Thank you, Annie, for inviting me. And thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for being here today. Good morning. I hope this finds you all doing very well. I, for one, am very excited to be here to share a lot of information. I have sort of a power-packed presentation. I also want to give you all fair warning that there is going to be an expectation for you all to do interactive. So please be ready and not just be off in the corner doing something else, because I am going to put you in a breakout room with only one other partner, and you are going to be doing some activity with one another. And so I just want to give you a warning about that. For those of you who can set up your video so I can see you, that will be even better. But a little bit about me, I am a mediator. I mediate divorces. I mediate any sort of real estate issues. I mediate probate, as well as workplace conflicts. So I do a lot of conflict resolution. And I'm also a negotiation coach. So I coach people to become better at communication, better at closing deals, and better at having difficult conversations with their coworkers, direct reports, and clients. So a lot of that is sort of my wheelhouse. I have a background in theater. I have a degree in acting, and I also studied and did some master's work for directing. And a lot of the skills that I learned in the theater world, I directly translate into my work right now, because you have to really understand what is happening with people and read what is not being said, right? So basically reading between the lines. So that's a little bit about me. So let me just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So I'd love to know what your definition is of negotiation before we even get started, just so we can have sort of where everyone is. So you can either put it in the chat, or you're welcome to raise your hand and get my attention. So what is your definition of negotiation? Who would like to say out
Well,
loud?
I'll go first. My definition of negotiation is successfully getting what I want, or at least most of what I want. Right, Alice?
Yes, that is an excellent one. What else? I just want to hear what people think of when they think of the word negotiation. And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to get a sense of, what do you think about when you hear the word negotiation? You can put it in the chat if you don't want to call it out loud, but you're welcome to just say it out loud. Go ahead.
Compromise.
Compromise. Okay.
Win-win.
Win-win. Excellent. Coming to a common ground. Coming to a resolution. Good. Anyone else want to drop something in the chat? And then I will share with you what my definition of negotiation is as a negotiator and mediator. All right. So it's taken a while for people to wake up, so that's fine. Maybe you can go get your second cup of coffee. Okay. So for me, negotiation is basically when you're trying to get two or more people on the same page, right? That is usually negotiation. And the reason why I make a very broad definition is because you are negotiating every day, multiple times a day, whether you realize it or not. Just finding out what time should we go out to dinner, where should we go out to dinner, anything like that, that is trying to get on the same page with someone else. And that's a negotiation. So if you feel like, well, I don't really negotiate that much, I want you to realize that you actually are negotiating regularly. There's a question here, Annie, about if people receive a link to this recording.
Actually, I believe so. Abigail will probably manage that.
Okay, great. So, and then also sometimes you'll find that you need to negotiate with yourself as well. And so if you're trying to get what you want and you're trying to get yourself to do the things to get to what you want, then you may end up negotiating with yourself as well. Okay. And then what is your biggest challenge when it comes to negotiation? So I'd love to hear what your biggest challenge is. You're welcome to put it in the chat, or you're welcome to say it out loud. Stress. Okay. So I'm presuming, Eva, that when you say stress, that it's stressful when you have to negotiate with someone. Is that correct? Is that what you meant when you said stress? Okay. What are some other challenges that people are facing?
The fear of losing.
The
Good.
opposing side.
Okay, the
Yeah.
opposing side. Great. Lack of confidence, fear of losing, trying to get your point across. Great. These are all excellent challenges that you're bringing to the table. And what I'm going to aim to do is I'm going to aim to reduce some of these challenges through my workshop today. All right. So there are gender differences in negotiations. Linda Babcock wrote a book called Ask for It, and she talks about these gender differences. Now, I myself have not taken statistical data to find out what these gender differences are, but I can tell you that by speaking, I've spoken to hundreds of people that I am also noticing there are gender differences in the way men and women negotiate. Men negotiate 4 times more than women. This is theorized by Linda Babcock. It could be because when boys are younger, they're doing the types of things that you can negotiate for money. You're going out mowing the lawn, asking your neighbors for money to mow their lawn or cut down their trees or any kind of manual labor work where you can get paid. Whereas girls, I'm going to back up. Girls are usually doing things such as maybe more household chores that happen daily. They're smaller. And so then they're not negotiating. So then if you have a man and a woman who are finishing up college, one of them probably has about 10 years more experience negotiating than the other, right? So if you've got a 22-year-old man and a woman, and each of them get a $25,000 offer as their very first job offer, what do you think the women do?
Something stupid. I can say I've been guilty of it, so I probably don't negotiate it as well.
Okay. They maybe don't negotiate it as well. Anyone else want to take a guess on what they think women typically do?
They take it.
Look at that. Look at
They
that. Anyone who thought that, you're correct. Women take it. Okay. What do you think the men do?
Talk back.
Advocate for themselves.
Advocate for themselves. They negotiate. Look at that. And they get $30,000. Now, you figure the raises are based on a percentage. So even if they get a raise the very next year and it's the same percentage, someone who is starting at a lower number is going to get a lower raise. So over the course of their career lifetimes, this difference in negotiations can result in up to $750,000 of a loss for the women because they're not negotiating. And this is not like every single woman, nor is it every single man. But my point in showing these statistics is that you can lose a lot if you're not negotiating and advocating for yourself very strongly. It can make a big difference in your life. All right. So I want you all to think about how many of you actually negotiate for what you want in life and are actually getting it. Okay. So one of the most important things is to prepare. And what you want to do for every single negotiation is I want you to think about your BATNA and your WATNA. What are these? BATNA is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. That does not mean what's the best thing that you can negotiate. No, it means what is the best thing you have if your negotiation fails. If the deal falls off the table, there's no deal, what is the best alternative that you have going for you? And what is the worst alternative that could happen if you lose the deal. All right. And so what that does is that frames for you your negotiation, because you know the best thing and the worst thing that's going to happen if you don't close this deal. So that gives you an idea of like where you, how to, guides you through the negotiation process. Also, if your BATNA is better than the deal on the table, then should you take the deal on the table?
If it's better than me, well, perhaps not.
Perhaps not. Correct. If you have a better BATNA, then you know, oh yeah, I'm not going to take this deal because I have something better in my back pocket.
Right.
Right. Let's say that you're out getting a job. If you have another job offer and that job offer pays you better benefits and a higher salary, and you're trying to beat that, but this current job offer does not beat that, then you know, well, I'm not going to take this job because I have a better BATNA. And you also want to make sure that you know that you are negotiating with someone who has authority. There's nothing worse than going into a negotiation, you negotiate, spend a bunch of time and energy, and find out at the very end that they have to go ask someone. So now you're again put on hold while they say, well, let's come back and talk tomorrow because I have to go talk to my boss or someone else who actually has authority because I don't have authority. Right? So you want to make sure that when you're going into a very important negotiation, you are dealing with the person who has the authority to close the deal. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You want to make a list of what it is that you want. What do you want? And this isn't just for your business. This is also in your personal lives. And then you don't want to stop there because most people stop there. They are like, I know what I want. I'm going to go ask for it. But very rarely do people actually think about what do they want, meaning the other side. Very few people think about that. If you know what the other side wants and what their interests are, you'll have a better chance of getting to that win-win that someone mentioned earlier, because now you're like, oh, I know that X, Y, and Z is very important for them. Let me make sure that they get a little bit of that so that I can get what I want. Now, I've got two boys. I was just telling Annie, they're teenagers. One is 19 and one is almost 16. And I've been training them to negotiate. And I can tell you that my older son is really getting good, because what he does when he comes to me with something that he's going to ask, he normally thinks about what do I want first, and he makes that offer first. So he will say, if I do X, Y, and Z for you, or I give you X, Y, and Z, can you give me this? So he doesn't just come and say, hey, by the way, mom, can you give me a ride? He will say, if I do this for you, will you do that for me? So he's always thinking in terms of a deal. And very, very often he gets what he wants because he's making me an offer. He's not just coming to me saying, can I have this? Or can you do this for me? He is trying to make a deal. Now, where is this most utilized and beneficial? When you're negotiating with a spouse. Instead of just saying, hey, by the way, can you do this for me? You want to say, I will do this for you if you do that for me. And so frequently when I'm coaching people, they forget to think about what does the other side want. So I want you to do those things. All right. So this is just the preparation. Any question on the preparation part of it? All right. Everybody got it?
I think we might use the spouse negotiation skills maybe even more than the business ones.
Yes. Yes. For example, I recently had someone who wanted to move to Chicago from Minneapolis to go get a job. And he said, hey, I'm constantly having fights with my spouse because he doesn't want to move there. He just wants to go get a job and commute. It's like a 45-minute airplane commute. And he said, it's been very touchy. And every time he brings it up, she's arguing about it. And so I asked him, okay, you want to think about what you can offer her if you do move to Chicago. And also, what can you ask for if you stay and you don't move? And his response was, I have never thought of that. And he's like, I never even thought about asking for anything if I'm going to give up the move and stay here. And so that like added a whole layer of negotiation for him to be able to potentially get to a resolution. Okay. All right. So we're going to dive into strategies now. You're welcome to put any questions you have in the chat or any comments as we go. I don't like to save questions for the end, so just ask me when they come up. Okay. So strategies, asking the easy questions first. There's a couple of reasons why you want to ask easy questions when you're talking to someone, when you're trying to negotiate with them. You're trying to build rapport if it's someone that you don't know. People like to work and deal with people who they like. And so if they like your energy, they're going to want to do some deals with you. So you want to build the rapport by asking easy questions, and you're trying to understand what things are important to them. All right. So that's what you're trying to ascertain in the early stage of the negotiation. So you're not doing anything hardball yet. What was that? Okay. You want to talk about money last. So money is something that may come up sooner than you would like it to. You can easily sidestep that question. If someone asks you, well, what's the price? You can say, I know that this is very important. I will make sure that we'll get to it. We will be talking about it. But first, I want to talk about this. And you sidestep it and save it. Find out all the creative solutions first. And there's a very specific reason I want you to find these creative solutions first. And we're going to talk about what happens in your mind later. However, when you start to get stressed out, you are going to have less and less access to your creative side of your brain. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that is why I want you to come up with the creative solutions in the beginning before you start to panic in your brain and before you start to lose the ability to think creatively. So think about all the different ways that you can negotiate this deal, either before the negotiation or early on when you're talking to them and you're asking easy questions. I want you to mentally think, oh, I can like ask for this or I can offer that, and think about all the creative solutions in the early part of the negotiation. You want to think about what is cheap to you but valuable to them. Right? So for example, if I'm going to go get a job and I think, well, I would love to work from home, either part-time or full-time, that's very valuable to me to be able to work remotely. And it's probably very cheap for the company. Right? And so you want to think about these trades where things that are easy for you to give up, but maybe it's very valuable to them, and vice versa. What's really valuable to you that's easy for the other side to give up, and create as big of a list as you can, because this is what we call expanding the pie. So pieces of the pie are all the things that you can bargain with. And so you want to expand all of that, because the more you expand it, the better chance you have of getting to some kind of a win-win resolution. All right. Any questions about these so far? Okay. Asking, where are you inflexible, or what are your non-negotiables? And you want to ask it very specifically in this manner, because people don't want to show you where they're vulnerable. They don't want to say, oh yeah, I'm like, where are you negotiable? What can you negotiate? Well, I don't want to tell you what I'm open to negotiating, but I will tell you what's non-negotiable. I will say, don't touch this. I don't want to negotiate it. And that's it, right? If I say the price is the price is the price, we're not negotiating the price, guess what? Everything else is negotiable, right? So you're going to be able to ascertain what things are negotiable when they tell you, don't touch this because it's non-negotiable. Making two equivalent offers is one of my favorite strategies. It works. It works very well with my partner. It works very well with my children. What you want to do is you want to come up with two offers. They're equivalent to you. So emotionally, you have no preference. So I want to make sure that you're clear. You have no preference. You can make the offer and you can go to bed and sleep peacefully, that you're not up thinking, oh gosh, I hope they don't pick the second offer because I don't like it as much. If that is your feeling, don't make the offer. You want to make two equivalent offers. Now, what has to go in these offers? A little bit of what you want and a little bit of what the other person wants. in both of them. And you craft them so that you don't have a preference. They feel like they have a choice. They will either pick one or the other, or they may say, I want to pick this one with a few tweaks. And that's totally fine. Because if they ask for that, you're already significantly closer to what it is that you want because you've made that offer. Okay. So let me give you an example of how this went down in my house. I have one rule in my kitchen, which is if you use my kitchen with your friends and you bake or cook something, just put the kitchen back together the way it looked before. So make sure you clean it and everything looks great. So my son had friends over, 3 friends over to cook a nice dinner, and I stayed out of the kitchen. And the next morning I came into the kitchen to try to cook for someone who was coming over. And I noticed that there were some dishes in the sink. So in my opinion, he broke the rule. So it was 7 a.m. It was still early. And I went and I woke him up and I said, hey, by the way, you broke the rule. You're supposed to clean the kitchen and make it look like it did after your friends have left. And he began to argue with me saying, oh, you have no idea. It was such a mess. I spent like 3 hours from midnight till 3 a.m. cleaning the kitchen. We spilled flour all over the floor. I had to wipe all that up. And then some of the batter spilled in the oven when we were baking it. We had to wipe that up. And so he spent 3 hours. I believe him. So he told me, yeah, the dishes are just the last bit of it. And so I'm really tired and I figured like I can just leave it because I really did a good job. If you can't tell that the kitchen was completely a mess, it's because I did that good of a job cleaning it. We could have gone to the races in arguing, right? And I didn't want to do that. So I paused and I said, let me just make you an offer. I need the kitchen completely clean because I'm going to have to cook for someone coming over right now. So first offer, I will go and wash all the dishes and I'm not going to hold it against you. I'm not going to be angry about it. I'm just going to go do it right now. And in that offer, you get to keep your privilege to have your friends over anytime you want, to cook dinner anytime you want. That's offer number 1. Offer number 2, I'm sorry, I messed it up. If I go clean it, he loses that privilege, right? He loses the privilege of having his friends over. Offer number 2, he goes to clean the dishes right away and gets to keep that privilege. Okay. So it stopped all arguments. He glared at me once and he got up and he went to go wash the dishes immediately because I gave him offers where I was like, either one is fine with me. And I let him choose what was more important to him. So I had a little bit in it for him and me. The first one, he could sleep in. If he really was tired, he could sleep in. But the second one, where he kept the privilege, was more important for him. So he chose that one. So these things like keep the peace in the family because there's constant negotiations, right? Anchoring is where you make the first offer. Now, people always ask, should I make the first offer or not? I don't know if I should or not. You should make the first offer only if you know a lot of information about the thing that you're going to make an offer on. So if you're missing information or you're not 100% sure that you know everything, don't make the first offer. And when you anchor, it's called anchoring because it's when the negotiations are pulled closer to your number than to their number. All right. And so there's a higher chance that you will get closer to your number if you put your number down first. But make sure that you only do that when you understand and you're educated enough about the thing that you are negotiating. You want to make sure you're prepared for all scenarios. And when I say prepared, it's slightly different than the preparation I was talking about earlier. You want to really think about what potentially can they ask me? What things might they blindside me with? What comments might they make? What critical questions might they ask me? What demanding questions might they ask me? And prepare what your answers will be so that you're not caught off guard. So think through all the potential hazards that they might bring up for you and then be ready to answer them. And then finally, interest-based versus position-based negotiation. I would love to hear if anyone has heard of interest-based negotiation. Anyone here?
Not I.
Nobody? No
Nope.
takers? Okay.
We're learning something new.
Let's see. Okay. So Interest-based. So first of all, position-based is when you pick your position, right? You might say, hey, Alice, I want to go out to eat at an Italian restaurant. That's your position, right? And I will say, well, no, I want to go have Japanese. So now we're going to have an argument or a discussion, and we're having a position-based negotiation because you're picking the thing that you want, and I'm picking the thing that I want, and now we're off to the races to argue. Or this could be the same thing about, politics. People are choosing their position and they're arguing their position. Position-based negotiation is very weak, and it is what most people do because it's what they know. So from today on, I want you to start trying to change your position-based arguments, debates, and discussions to interest-based negotiation. And what that means is you ask deeper questions to find out what your interests are and what their interests are. So I might ask some questions like, well, why do you want to go to Italian? Like, what about Italian restaurants? And the person might say, well, I want to eat fish, or, and give all these reasons, the interests that are underlying their position. And then I will bring up my underlying interests. If you go deep enough, you will find there's some kind of common ground. And so what will happen is from that common ground, you can go back up and rebuild a solution. And sometimes a solution is neither here nor there. It might not be Japanese or Italian. It could be Mexican, right? So you can create a resolution that suits everyone's interests, but you have to ask all the questions to find out what the other person's interests are before you do that. All right? Any questions on my strategies before I go on? Everybody got it?
I think so.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to do a listening exercise. All right. So in a moment, we're going to break you out into breakout rooms, and you're going to have 5 or 6 minutes in there. So let me give you the instructions on what I want you to do. So why are we doing a listening exercise? Listening is really one of the fundamental skills that you need in negotiation. People do not do it enough. People are more inclined to try to argue their point and persuade someone else than they are to listening to the other side. Same thing with sales and where people are trying to talk versus listening. So listening is like the number one skill that you have to have. It's like sort of the base. And so the better your listening skills are, the better negotiator you will find that you are. Okay, so this is how we're going to do this exercise. You're going to have a partner. Person A, you have to figure out who's person A and person B. So let's just say person A is whoever's birthday is the closest to now. Okay, so you'll be person A. And you're going to talk for 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is I want you to tell a story about something that happened to you, like, the craziest adventure that you went on as a child or as a teenager, like some crazy story or adventure that you fondly recollect. All right. So you want to talk about that for 2 minutes. Person B, all you're going to do is listen. You're not going to ask questions. You're not going to say, oh, really? Yes. You're only going to listen for the 2 minutes. And when the 2 minutes are done, what I want you to do is I want you to take 1 minute, and recount as closely as possible everything that you heard. So I would say to Annie, for example, Annie, what I heard you say is, and I would say the whole thing. And then Annie will tell me how well I did. She might say, hey, you did great. You heard everything, or you missed a couple of things. All right. And once we get through that, then we're going to switch roles, and person B will talk about some crazy adventure that they fondly remember from their childhood. This can be teenager, this can be college. And then person A is listening, and then for 2 minutes. And then you'll repeat back everything in a 1 minute span, and then give feedback. Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. Hold on. I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to copy and paste hold on a second. I'm going to copy and paste the instructions in the chat so you all have it. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms after that. Any questions on this? All right. So what
No,
I'll
we
do,
were listening.
so what we'll do is I'll have broadcast. I'll stay in the main room. There's, I think, just enough so Annie, you and I can stay in the room. And so everyone else will be paired up. Oh, we had somebody drop. We had 2 people drop. People are like running away.
Well, we still have an even number.
Yes. So, yeah. And so, I'll broadcast like, hey, 2 minutes are up. Please recount what you're hearing. And then I'll continue to give you instructions as we go. Okay. Welcome back. I think we'll get the rest of the people in a few seconds. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. How was that? I would love to know a few things. Number one, how did it feel to be listened to so deeply by someone else? You can put in the chat or you can raise your hand or say it out loud.
Important.
I'm sorry, what was that? Important?
No, important. Yeah, felt important.
You felt important.
I feel I'm respected.
Respected. Great. Great. Those are all wonderful words. Did you all
Yes.
feel seen and heard by the other person?
Yes. So
Yeah.
pretty much it feels like you're being understood and what you're saying is really important to the other party, that they're really truly listening to you.
Good. Good.
Even though we didn't ask questions at the time.
Right. You're just repeating back what you heard, right?
Right.
So I want everyone to take that away to understand what it feels like when all the other person is doing is acknowledging that they heard you by saying it all back. It really imparts very, very positive feelings to the other side. And it helps you move forward in negotiations because they're like, oh, you're listening to me. You heard me. Very frequently in negotiations, particularly when they get hostile or tense, you're saying something, they're responding, you respond, they respond, you respond, right? And it goes back and forth, but there's very little acknowledgement happening. And so people are not necessarily feeling like they are heard or being heard. And so when you just repeat back and take that extra step to say, let me just make sure that I repeat back what I heard you say, that goes a long way because then the other person doesn't feel like, oh, you're just parroting me. No, you're going to say, I'm going to repeat it back because I want to make sure I caught everything. And you're going to say it all. And at the end, you're going to say, did I get that? Is that correct? And that way they can verify yes or no. All right. So I want you to like throw away the simple phrases such as I understand, because you're not showing that you understand when you just say I understand or I get it. So throw those in the garbage. Don't ever use them again. And when you're trying to exemplify that you are listening, you need to repeat back everything just to make sure that you heard everything and you didn't misunderstand them. All right. And then how did it feel to listen that deeply? What was that like?
I feel like I learned more about the person and knowing where they're going and where they're from. So it's a thorough, deeper understanding.
Good. Thank you. What about, how was it like for other people?
I think it's good to practice active listening, and that helps you to confirm what they're trying to tell you. Sometimes they might not know what they're looking for. So it's also a way to build rapport and for them to understand that you understand what they want.
Exactly. Exactly. And Philip, how difficult or easy was it for you to do the active listening?
I practice trying to do active listening. So Alice was my partner. I had explained to her that sometimes when you're making an offer for a listing or for us to buy, sometimes the seller may not be looking for the price. They might be looking for time. They might be looking for something else. And sometimes you have to be able to listen to what they're trying to tell you so that you can be able to write your offer effectively.
Exactly. Good. Great. And how many people notice it takes more energy to actively listen than to passively listen? Anyone notice that? Deepak?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's
you
like-
can imagine it's a pretty tiring process, particularly when you're not used to it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it's draining my energy to like actively listen because you're using more of your thought process. You're processing everything. Now, how many of you are note takers here who like to just write whenever anyone's talking? How many of you like to do that?
Oh, I
Okay.
often do
Yeah.
that because I
do.
remember it better. And once I write it down, even if I never look at it again, I actually remember it much better. But not everyone, maybe that's their style.
So a lot of times, so I'm curious, Annie. So if you were to write down notes, I'm just curious the way you process things. So this is more of a question. If I'm talking and you're listening to a lecture and you're writing it down, if I were to ask you a question about what I just said, if I've been talking for 15 minutes, can you respond to me like and tell me what I said, or do you need to check your notes to make sure that you got everything right before you tell me?
Well, that's exactly why I take the notes. In fact, when you said what the presentation was going, I mean, the exercise was going to be, I wrote it down. I may not I would not probably necessarily have to check the notes, but in my case, if I have, once I have written it down, like someone's name, for example, I got it. But if it's just audio, then I might lose it. Especially if I know how it's spelled, then I've got it. But I
Right.
know everyone does it differently. So I might not necessarily have to check it, or I might just check it to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. And so, yeah, so different people learn differently. I do know that writing things definitely helps with learning. And also, sometimes you're listening to record and you're not listening to process, right? So, because then you have it, so you can look at it later and you can study it and really make
Right.
sure it goes into your mind. But frequently, people are jotting down notes. I've been in places where I'm talking and then I ask a question and people say, hold on a second. And they look and then they respond after now they're processing it when they take a look at it, right? So just be aware of that when you are writing your notes. This goes for everyone. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't write notes, but just be aware that sometimes the processing might be a little delayed because right now you're listening to record versus listening to process. Okay. All right. So, any questions?
I have a question. So
Yeah.
in my situation, a lot of times it's the other person who is not listening. I feel like when I try to convey my messages and the other party, not today, I'm talking about not today's training. In my life, I feel like the other person is not listening and they either on purpose or just didn't have this listening skill, just don't listen. And I feel like I have to try different ways to convince them. And to the point that I don't want to talk to those people anymore because it's very tiring.
Yes. So depending on, I'm not sure like what the context is. I know that in my personal life, when I have personal relationships, because everyone who knows me personally knows that I do negotiation, I will ask my family members, my children, and my boyfriend, hey, I don't feel like you're listening. Can you do me a favor? Let me know what you heard. And when I say that, I can tell. Like sometimes my son will say, I know, I heard you. And I will say, okay, what can you tell me like what my 3 points were? And he will frequently say, I don't know. Right after he said, I heard you. And then I will say, why did you say you heard me when you can't repeat back? And he said, well, I was just telling you that so that you would stop talking. Right. So you can clearly tell when someone isn't listening because you can say, can you do me a favor? Can you let me know what it is that you heard? And then suddenly they're going to be like, oh, okay. And then sometimes if it's a higher conflict, as a mediator, I will let people know in the beginning before we have the conversation that I'm going to be asking people to repeat back what it is that they heard to ensure that there's clear communication. So if you're going into a high conflict conversation with someone, an argument, a fight, anything like that, you can say, let's both agree to like repeat back what it is that we heard the other person say before we respond. And that way you can clarify that both parties are listening, especially when people get emotional, they're not listening. So that's a really good point for me to transition to really quickly, because I want to talk a little bit about emotions. Okay. So when you have high emotions, defensiveness, anger, frustration, any of these things, your amygdala, which is in your brain, it's a small piece of your brain, it controls your fight, flight, or freeze. Usually this happens when you are in danger, right? So then you're like frozen or you're running away. But when you have high emotions, it triggers the same thing in your brain. Well, what does that mean, Alice? What do you mean? Like, why are we talking about this? Because when your amygdala is triggered, your executive functioning part of your brain is shut down. You can't think, you can't process, you can't hear. So now you're no longer listening. So if you are having a conversation with someone who is angry, they are actually not hearing you. You might say to me, I told them everything, I explained everything, I was very articulate. But if they were feeling defensive or upset or emotional in any way, shape, or form, I can guarantee you they didn't hear one word that you said. And it's important because in negotiation, you want to make sure the other person heard your side of the story. So being able to articulate it well is only half the battle. The other half of the battle is making sure they heard everything you said.
So
Right.
in that situation, if that person is angry and they didn't hear anything I said, what would be my strategy?
So if the other person is really angry and you feel like they're not listening to you, you want to make sure that you pause and you repeat back everything you heard them say. Or at least if it's been going back and forth already, you can say, let me make sure I understand your point of view. Your point of view is that you're unhappy with me because of this. You think I did this. You think I did that. And like list everything that they have said. And you will visibly see the person calm down. Because now they're like, oh, now she's listening. Yes, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. And they're going to come down. And when they calm down a little bit, then you can say, okay, I understand that this is how you're feeling. Let me try to address these things. So even if you don't agree, even if you feel like it's not true, all you have to do is acknowledge what they are saying or feeling. And that is sufficient. If someone says to me, Alice, you're lying, and I don't feel like I was lying, I should not say I wasn't lying. That's not the phrase I should use. What I should say is, let me make sure I understand you correctly. You feel like I'm lying to you. Is that right? And they're going to say, yes, I do feel like you're lying to me. Okay, great. Now I can move forward in the conversation because you're now acknowledging what's being said. So that is going to bring the heat from the other side down, and it will enable them to listen to you a little bit more because now they're not upset. You don't ever want to have a conversation or a negotiation with anyone if either one of you is upset, because both of you are talking into like nowhere. It's not actually going into someone else's mind. Your words are getting lost.
So I just assume that they are angry for any reason, but it's not visible. Okay. So I would like to assume that when they are not hearing me, there's something going on in their mind, regardless they are related to me or not. So I just assume they are angry, right? And then use the strategy that you just mentioned.
Yes. And you can also say, this is the other piece that I wanted to touch on, something called labeling, which is when you're trying to label their emotional state. So I might say, Annie, it seems that you are unhappy with my services. Like I'm trying to elicit the emotion that she's feeling. And she might say, no, it's not that I'm unhappy, Alice. I'm frustrated that you are not answering your calls when I call you, right? She's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to understand her emotional state so that I can actually understand what's happening. And so, Philip, you're talking about being able to understand what's going on with the other side. So when we're trying to elicit the emotions of the other side, you open up a whole new door to another conversation so you can go deeper and deeper, right? Because if I'm not understanding Annie and what's going on with her, and I don't know what's happening with her emotionally, she can hide all of her objections. But if there's something weird going on, call it out. I'd say, Annie, I'm sensing there's something else that you're not telling me, or I'm sensing that you really don't want to work together anymore. Now it's safe for her to talk about it because I've named it. If I don't name it, it's not a safe place for her to talk about it. But if I name what's going on, she can say, oh, Alice named it, so I'm going to tell her. Yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant to work with you because X, Y, and Z. She's not going to just go ahead and give me that information without any prompting.
Right. That makes sense. It's kind of an invitation.
Yes, it's an invitation. And it's saying like, I'm here and it's a safe space to talk about it. And I'm also acknowledging I'm already sensing this anyway. So you
Right.
want to be able to call out whatever you're seeing in the other person, even if it's something negative against you, call it out. You can say, hey, Philip, I'm noticing, Philip, like you don't seem very happy with like the services that I'm offering, right? It's okay because then he can tell you I'm not. And I'll say, okay, great. Talk to me more about what's happening. Where can I improve? What can I do better for you? And now we're having a negotiation again. We're back into negotiation mode. But if I don't call out what I'm sensing, we're stuck. And I'm thinking like, I don't know where to go with this conversation. And you're going to feel very uncomfortable and awkward and feel like, oh my gosh, I want to flee because I don't know what to say. Call out what you're seeing and sensing from the other side. Okay. Questions on emotions. I know I like ran through that really quickly, but I want to make sure I got that in.
Sorry, I do have a question regarding the listening practice. It's a little bit like from the previous topic. So, when we're engaging in active listening, I kind of feel like that's between very balanced relationship. For example, what if in our real estate practice, and it's very competitive in the Bay Area, a lot of times for one listing, there could be like a multiple offers. So that kind of creates non-equivalent relationship between the buyer's agent and the listing agent. The listing agents might getting tons of calls like on a random given day, but like every buyer agent is trying to actively talking to the listing agent. In that kind of situation, how should we just help us negotiate if the time is really of the essence for the listing agent?
Yeah, so it's very much what Philip was talking about regarding active listening. You want to end up asking more questions than talking. So you want to ask as many questions about what they're interested in, what are they looking for, what is important to them, and really try to hear also what's not being said, right? And so if you find that you're talking more than you're listening, you need to like notice in your mind, like, oh, I'm talking a lot. And I want you to like switch to listening a lot, right? Because anytime you're trying to convince someone, you cannot convince them if you're not listening for what is important to the other side. If you
I
don't
see.
know what's important to them, you can talk and talk and talk all day, and you're not going to convince them of anything. So if you listen and you ask questions, curious questions, right? To say, oh, like, I'm really curious to know, what about this or what about that? And have them talk, then you will start to understand, oh, okay, now I know what's important to them. So let me make sure that in my offer, I include that. Because as Philip mentioned, it's not always money. It could be time, it could be sentimental things that they're thinking about. Who knows what it is, but listen more than you're talking when it's a highly competitive market, because you want to understand what will give you the edge, and you won't know what will give you the edge if you're not listening closely enough.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to briefly talk about, because I know we're almost at time. So hold on one second. Let me just share my last screen with you. So I do have a book. It's a short little cute little book called Negotiating with Your Kids. For those of you who have kids, you can find it on Amazon. So just want to promote that a bit. And I have negotiation courses at Shakina Negotiation Academy. So for those of you who are interested, I do have an 8-week course. We practice, practice, practice. So we do practice all of these things that we talked about, and you will come out razor sharp If you feel like you'd like to invest in yourself to be able to get really good at negotiating, please check out ShakinaNegotiationAcademy.com. And we've got courses on Fridays at noon. They are online. So thank you so much for having me. I think we're at time. Annie, thanks so much.
Thank you, Alice. We really appreciate you. That was very enlightening.
And I will drop my email in the chat. So those of you who would like to reach out, please do so. I would be happy to have a call with you.
Thanks a lot, Alice. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you,
Thank
Deepak. And I'll
you.
be chatting with you soon.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all.
guys.